1978 saw the election of a new pope, twice, within a month. The first one took the name John Paul I. It was Cardinal Albino Luciani. His reign lasted only a month. Then he died under what many regarded as mysterious circumstances. Had this man lived, many believe we would be seeing an altogether different face of the Church, and indeed of the world. He was one of the most remarkable people produced by the 20th century. In Italy, he was known as Il Sorriso di Dio, the smile of God. 20 years before, in December of 1958, Albino Luciani was named Bishop of the beautiful diocese of Vittorio Veneto. At that time, that town, like so many cities throughout the world, had many street children. The poor, orphaned, crippled, blind, lame children who had nowhere to go were on the streets begging for their food. Every Sunday, the front steps of the cathedral were covered with these poor orphans begging from the well-dressed people coming to church. The fine people were always embarrassed to see these children, so many of them would sneak around to the back door to avoid being made uncomfortable by the sight of these poor orphans. The time came for the new bishop to be installed. At Christmas time of 1958, he was to have his first Mass in the cathedral. All the fine people of the city came decked out in their finest clothes to see their new bishop. As they approached the cathedral, they noticed that for the first time the front steps of the cathedral were empty. None of the poor orphans were there. Some of the people remarked, "At last somebody has cleaned up this mess." But when they entered the cathedral, they saw something that astonished them. On the front pews of the cathedral were signs that read, "Riservati per I bambini speciali di Dio," reserved for God's special kids. And there, in the very front rows of this magnificent cathedral, sat about 200 of these poor orphans, marveling for the first time in their life at the great works of art in the church, for the first time in their lives able to be in the same room as the finely dressed people of the city. Such a man was John Paul I. Jesus recounts a similar dream of his when he tells us that when we hold a banquet, we should not invite relatives or friends or wealthy neighbors who might be able to repay us. Instead, we should invite the blind, the lame, the crippled, the poor. These cannot repay us, so we will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. Most of us are probably relieved not to have to invite our relatives. But most of us enjoy the company of those we consider our equals. We don't like being around people we consider to be beneath us. Jesus tells us not to be afraid of these people either, not to be afraid to associate with them, to have them at our table. We might be surprised at what we learn from them. Once I was invited to a very elegant dinner by a very elegant lady who said, "Oh, the ambassador of this country and that country will be there, and only the finer people, the better people will be invited." That was the wrong thing to say to me. I usually find the company of finer people rather boring. I wish she had invited just a couple of ordinary, everyday people to make the evening more interesting. So I told her, unfortunately, I had other plans. Many people, in their snobbery, consider themselves to be among the better people. And yet, when we consider that God himself, who is infinitely greater than any of us, humbled himself enough to come down and become one of us, how can we possibly have the arrogance to look down upon any other human being when the actual differences between us are really so insignificant? Not long ago I read a true story of a lady who was engaged to be married. She paid for a big fancy hotel to have the banquet. But then the guy got cold feet and decided he didn't want to get married after all. The poor girl didn't know what to do. She went to the hotel and tried to get her money back, only to be told, "Sorry, there is no refund. You have lost all those thousands of dollars." So what did she do? She went to the homeless shelters in town and got all those people who had never known a nice evening, gathered them together at the big fancy hotel, and sat down with them to the best meal of their whole life. That is exactly what Jesus is talking about. That was a smart woman. For those people, that was the best evening of their life. But more to the point, it was also the best evening of this woman's life. That gesture made all the difference. Jesus is not talking principally about a dinner. He is talking about the banquet of life. He is talking about not being afraid to associate with different types of people. Every person born into this world has something to say, something to give. You might not like what they are saying. You might not want what they are giving, but your association with other people will enrich both them and you. When Jesus tells us we will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous, he is not referring to an afterlife. This lifting up, resurrecting of the righteous happens right here, as soon as we reach the point where we dare to invite a poor and marginalized not only to our table, but to our heart. At that moment, we have not so much lifted them up as we have lifted ourselves up. It is then and only then that we become worthy of the name child of God. And one day, when we reach the eternal banquet of life, we may just find that we, you and I, were those blind and lame and crippled and orphaned and poor that have been lifted up in the embrace of a loving God and placed now in that special pew reserved for God's very special children.